Thank you so much.
That's fantastic.
Welcome.
They work on the wow. These microphones.
They work, yes, they do. Big voice.
Okay, all right, good.
So, when is the last time you guys saw each other? It was another Blue Velvet related event.
7 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Stage when we saw each other.
And then last time we saw each other, I think it was at the screening of Blue Velvet at MoMA, at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, when it was the 30th anniversary.
Right,
Blue
just a
Velvet.
couple
We
days
shot,
ago.
yes. We shot Blue Velvet in '85, but the film came out in '86,
Right.
long time ago.
But you follow each other on Instagram, I understand.
Yes.
So you're
No, we
seeing each
do
other.
see each other occasionally, or we communicate, yeah.
We do. I love it. I love Isabella's Instagram. Anybody follow Instagram? Isabella?
Woo!
Do you know the names of all of her chickens? That's the best. I love that. That's my favorite.
I ran a farm, so I have chickens for the one that don't know it. And I'm also studying animal behavior, so there's a lot of references to animals in my Instagram.
Yeah, you're pursuing a master's right now.
Pursuing a master's degree on animal
In
behavior.
animal behavior.
Woo!
So talk to me about the first time both of you read the script and what your very first impressions were. I heard you say, Kyle, that you wanted your parents to read it and get their approval before you signed on, which
Well,
is very
It
curious.
wasn't so much their approval, but it was, so Blue Velvet was my second film and my second film with David. So, yeah, I wanted them to, you know, be engaged in what I was doing. So my dad read the script and said, oh, it's okay. Classic dad. And then my mom read the script and she didn't say anything. And she had been remarried at that time, and her husband came to me and said, you know, she's kind of upset by it. I said, I understand, it's not the easy thing, but I really feel that David, you know, is going to handle it well. The script was quite graphic in the way, as I remember, as it was written. So everything that you saw was written out quite detailed. And there were a few moments there when Isabella and I got to know each other very well. That were written out, and so my mom was moved. But it was fine. She came around. It's all right.
And I was in a restaurant eating with some of the Dino De Laurentiis family. Dino De Laurentiis is the producer of Blue Velvet, and I was having a dinner with his wife, and David was sitting in the same restaurant with Dino De Laurentiis' daughter. And so when we entered, we all said, oh, hi, and we sat together at the same table. And David said, you know, you look like Ingrid Bergman. And somebody said, you idiot, she is your daughter. That's how we met. And then David found out that I was an actress too, and I just finished a film with Helen Mirren. And Kyle does the perfect imitation of David, so you can tell, you can do David begging me to get Helen Mirren, the script of Blue Velvet.
I don't think I knew that story. That's hilarious. Izo, listen. Oh, he didn't call you Izo yet.
David called me Izo, but he called me Izo then.
Oh my God. That's
But
hilarious.
he said, please, can I have a phone number? I want her so much for this new film that I'm doing, Blue Velvet. And you know, I didn't know what to say. And then the next day, I received the script with a note from David saying, last night it occurred to me that maybe you would want to play the role. So I read the script, and like you, Kyle, I liked it very much, but I could see that it was, it required a lot of difficult scenes.
Courage.
Nudity, which of course I didn't want to do.
But you're European, come on.
But yes, that's what everybody thought. He said, oh, European, she can take your clothes off. I remember the night before my nude scene, going to dinner with other actors, and I was eating pasta, and somebody said, oh, you're so lucky to be European. You don't go on a diet before you do a nude scene. That didn't occur to me. Because in America, you don't eat for a month.
2 months.
script, but so he wanted to do a test. And I said, I would like to test, because sometimes as an actor you test not with the other actors, and so it's very artificial. And I thought it was too difficult too difficult script to just rehearse with a casting agent. And I said, can I rehearse with an actor, or the actor that was going to play Jeffrey Beaumont, the character that you played. And so David, we were in a hotel room and we rehearsed the scene. We didn't know the lines, but we improvised the scene, and we did most of them to feel, and that was the beginning of understanding what David was seeking in Blue Velvet.
And the happiest day of my life, actually.
And
Get to rehearse with Isabella Rossellini.
This was only your third film, and I think your second.
Yes, it was my third film. I did a film in Italy with two wonderful brothers that worked together. One recently died, the Taviani brothers. That was my first film. We got such bad reviews that I stopped working for 3 years because I thought I better find another job. And then was still modeling, and modeling was doing very well. And so another film came, and that one was with Misha Baryshnikov, with whom I became also very good friends. I'm now performing at this space. It's called the Baryshnikov Art Center. I'm performing there at Link Circus. So, and then before that film came out, it was called White Night, we filmed Blue Velvet.
Did you have a sense that you sort of had to prove yourself in this role, it being so early in your acting career, or not so much?
I'm sorry for you, but I never think of you, audience. I always think of what is interesting to me, or David seemed very fascinating. I looked at his work, especially Eraserhead, which I thought it was such an interesting film. So I wanted to work with him. I mean, I don't know if it is the same for you, Kyle, but as an actress, I feel that I can take, it's like a tour into somebody's mind, and it's the director's mind, because we're just interpreters of what is in their mind. And if that mind is interesting, it's a very interesting trip. And so when I saw David's film and met him, it was, I wanted to understand his art and where it was going. Do you feel the same as an actor?
Yeah, I mean, starting with Dune, so that was, David wrote the script from the book, and I knew the book very well, so that was a mix, you know, it was of translating Frank Herbert's work on the film and also on the screen, and then also how David had interpreted that through the script. And then what the eye-opener for me was when I got Blue Velvet and I read that, and that was David, you know, 100%. And that was surprising to me because as I read it, I really understood Jeffrey's journey. I said, yeah, I could see where that would happen, and this would happen, and you would get too far, and it made complete sense to me. And so I just went with that. I understood it.
So what I'm saying, I don't think of you, audience, is that sometimes, to me, when I read a script, it's more interesting to take the adventure to work with a group of people, of talented people, rather than a strategic move for my career. I never thought I was going to have a career. I did have a very good career, but it was never, you know, I was never thinking, what should I do to make myself successful? I always really only basically went where I was interested.
And Kyle, I'm curious, a lot of people, you know, see Jeffrey as sort of an avatar for David. How did that affect how you played him, and did you see him that way?
I think so, yeah. I think it was a journey that David saw himself taking in if this world existed. But I think that has been a theme that's followed us. David creates the world of Twin Peaks. I think Dale Cooper is the embodiment of how David would like to. In fact, David loved the world of Twin Peaks so much that he became a part of it with Gordon Cole. The Cooper role was already taken, so he took Cooper's box. So I can't win, you know. So, yeah, I think I am in some ways sort of embodiment of something that David would like to explore and live in. And these worlds are very real to him. The world of Twin Peaks really exists. The world of Blue Velvet really exists, I think, for him. Those characters are alive and mean something to him.
Isabella, I'm curious about your singing numbers in the film, and if you could talk a little bit about, because you're not a singer.
No, I'm not a singer. That's how David met Angelo Badalamenti, who then composed all the wonderful music. It was because of my inability to sing.
But it is really you singing.
Yes, it's really me singing. David thought that it had to be me because I have an accent, and it would have been very difficult to have somebody else do my voice. So we tried. And I remember that David first had a little band, local in North Carolina, where we shot the film. But I had an idea that the way it had to be, that when my character Dorothy sang, she had to sing all her melancholia, all her sadness. So although the song is a ballad, it wasn't, the original song, but Bobby Vinton isn't particularly sad. I thought the way I had to deliver it, because I'm an actress, so I see the emotion, not the musical quality. And so I didn't really like working with that band, and there was a little tension. And then the producer said, I have a friend who does jingles for commercial, and he's very flexible and very helpful. And here come Angelo Badalamenti. And so he'd helped me find the right tone for the song. He also helped me because I don't have a very good voice, so it's all edited. A note here, a note there, so it looks like I'm singing beautifully. And then David and Angelo became very good friends, and then since they worked together.
So in retrospect, it's great that you couldn't sing, because it led David to Angelo, in a way. It's great that you were not a singer, because...
Yes, it was great that I wasn't a singer, because it was a better destiny.
Could you guys talk about working with Dennis Hopper a little bit? He's so memorable in this film.
I remember meeting Dennis for the first time, and there's a Dennis is coming, Dennis is coming. What's going to happen, and he arrived there, and I remember I was on the back lot, I think I was hanging out with some of the grips, and he came, and he was dressed very suave. He had on a houndstooth jacket, like a sweater, and just looked really sharp, and introduced himself, and was just sort of solid and friendly and nice, and he had gone through obviously some difficulties, but he had been sober for a couple of years prior to filming Blue Velvet, and he was, I didn't really have to act too much in the scenes with Dennis. It was basically just reacting to what he was doing, as you can imagine. And just a lovely, lovely person, so smart, so supportive, and I know in the work that you did with him, that was really important, and I think you guys felt
it was so, because first of all, David thought that one of the first scenes we shot is that ritualistic rape, that you haven't seen the film, you're going to see it, where Frank Booth is the name of the character that Dennis plays, comes to Dorothy's house, and ritualistically, you see that he's raping her, but in a ritualistic way, so that every day is the same thing, and Dorothy is completely obedient and terrified. And David decided that was the first scene to shoot with Dennis, who just had come out of 3 years of rehab, and David described him, because first he hired us, and then he called me and he said, I found the character of David Booth is going to be Dennis Hopper, and I said, Dennis Hopper, how is he? And David said, he's a ticking bomb.
It just gives you so much confidence. Puts you completely at ease.
So and I'm going to maybe scandalize you a little bit. So one of the first things that I had to do in the ritualistic thing, he sits in front of me and I have my blue velvet robe, I have to open my blue velvet robe, and he's going to talk, just genuflecting to me, and I have to have my legs spread. And then he punches me. But every time he punched me, my blue velvet robe will open, and you would see that I was wearing underwear. So David said, you have to remove your underwear, because otherwise you see that there is the underwear, and the whole idea is that he is worshipping your vagina. So I took my underwear
First
off.
day.
So it was only Dennis that was going to see, because the crew was going to be in the back. So I took my underwear off, I spread my legs, and I said to Dennis, I'm sorry. And he said, don't worry, I've seen it before. That was Dennis.
So the reception of this film has really changed over time, and the response, obviously was very polarizing, but now, look at how many people are here to see it, and it's really has this cult status. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, and when you kind of knew it had this second life beyond the initial release.
I think I remember a couple moments when they did a preview screening. They had a preview screening, which I don't know if they do that anymore, actually. And they decided they would screen it out in what's known as the Valley outside of Los Angeles, like suburbs, kind of, outside. And they took over a multiplex and sprung it on people. And I think the cards came back, because everyone fills out a card, and so it says, the worst film I've ever seen. People walked out. It was horrible. And we had a dinner scheduled, I think, later that evening, when the results were sort of going to be brought in, and we were all it was sort of depressing. But as I recall, it was Pauline Kael, who was a critic at that time, and she championed the film in a very intelligent way, and she actually sort of taught people, or brought them along, made them understand what this film was about, and gradually from there, it became, the critical success that it is.
And Isabella, you've said that, when people loved the film, they attributed it to David, and people that did not like the film sort of took it out on you. And the infamous Roger Ebert rant comes to mind.
So at the time, I was having a big career as a model. I had a big contract with a cosmetic company called Lancôme, and also my mother was Ingrid Bergman, a very famous Hollywood star. My father was Roberto Rossellini. So, as I don't think of the audience, I didn't think of that either. I mean, I just think interesting script, and I wanted to work with David. So when I did the film, a lot of people read into my image as if I perceive myself as an image. She's doing that to rebel against the image of a mother, or against the image that Lancôme gave of her. I never think of myself as an image, I think of myself as myself. So I do what is interesting to me. So people that didn't like the film read a lot into, she used this to rebel, or to some self-destruction, I don't know, something strange. But people that liked the film loved David's work, so they were disturbed by these kind of comments, and so they said, well, maybe it should have been Helen Mirren, it should have been me. So it was difficult at the beginning, but then little by little, the film acquired its reputation. The film was produced by Dino De Laurentiis, and so when the marketing research came back negative, that the film was not going to be appreciated by the audience, Dino decided to distribute it in Italy as a midnight film, like a porno. So that was really damaging. Still today, I have some problems in Italy with my career. And of course, Macron threatened to fire me, so, it was complicated.
And the original cut of the film was 4 hours long. There were many scenes that were cut, even from the original script, and I'm curious if there were any scenes that were cut that you wish had made the final cut?
Gosh, I don't remember, to be honest.
Yeah, I remember one scene that I done that I was cut, but that happens in every film. You know, in every film you shoot more and then it's edited, and so a lot of scenes. There was one scene that I thought was nice, and at least it gave me another dimension of my character. And my character Dorothy is in on a roof, and I have red shoes, and my name is Dorothy, like Dorothy of the Wizard of Oz. And my red shoes, I had red shoes, and I take my red shoes and I drop them from the building. And to me it was like practicing suicide, and it was very important to me to have the name Dorothy, because I thought Dorothy was I was always dreaming for the rainbow, and my character, although was abused, she still had a hope. She still had something. So that seemed to me that it wasn't so important that it was in the film, but it gave me a dimension of this character, meditating to maybe commit suicide, but also having the red shoes and looking for the rainbow.
And Kyle, you've been working with David over a very long span of time now, and curious how that working relationship has changed.
You know, it hasn't changed that much, honestly. I think, apart from the fact that we're much older now, and I think, you know, an artist, not they get better as they evolve, you know, because David has always been just brilliant, amazing, and it's just gotten richer, I think, somehow, working with him. I think what's happened is maybe I've matured and have a better understanding of our relationship, you know. And so when the Twin Peaks opportunity came along again, I was so excited. I was very excited to revisit Twin Peaks and the role of Cooper, but more than anything, it was a chance to work with David again. Now at an older age for myself, more understanding, more mature, I think, and be able to really, I feel, really appreciate what that man can bring in that creative mode. So, but the actual day-to-day was pretty much the same. You know, it's a very joyful experience. You come to the set, David's smiling, he's so happy to see you, he can't wait to start work. We have a cup of coffee and a small piece of donut, because you can't have the whole donut, right? In case there's a nude scene, for God's sake. Anyway, and you just start the day, and it's just a fun, creative, engaging process with him.
And you were telling a story backstage about a time when you interrupted him while he was meditating on the Dune set.
Yeah, well, David's a meditator, has been a meditator now for 45 years. So, every day, you know. And so when I was working with him on Dune, I had really no idea about this meditation thing. So, but I knew that he would disappear every day for a few minutes to meditate. So, one day in particular, we were all staying in the same kind of, almost like a dorm room actually. It was like a studio, but all the rooms were together. And I went down to his room to ask him some questions about Dune and Paul and something, who knows. Anyway, I noticed on the door, on the handle, was a sign that said, "No mole stars." And I was like, "No mole stars." And I knew David, you know, he was, you know, a little eccentric, you know, and it was drawn in kind of a particular David way, and like it had like a little star on it or something. I was like, "No mole stars," whatever. Knock, knock, knock. "Hey, David, it's Kyle." And I looked, I said, "Am I interrupting?" And he was meditating. He said, "No, that's okay, Kyle, come on in." And I said, No, that's okay. He said, "Did you notice the sign on the door?" And I said, Yeah, no mole stars. I didn't know what that meant. And he said, "It's no molestar." So I say, that's how I learned Spanish. And that was that was the first and last time I interrupted him. I know what mole stars mean.
Now you'll never forget. Isabella, I know, so you mentioned you're studying animal behavior, and I'm curious if anything you've learned recently has helped you understand the motivations of some of the Blue Velvet characters.
No.
Your human behavior.
No, there is no, there is no connection. No, I always loved animals, so and I'm curious about them as curious about art, and actually in my expression, because now I also write and direct, something I didn't do when I was doing Blue Velvet. So as for David, I would say it's probably mystery that is his muse. For me, it's animals. So I write about their behavior or their evolution. So that's my muse. So as an author, I write about animals.
And a dog is the reason that you can't stay to watch the entire film, is that right? The dog that you have to work with later today, if you could maybe...
Oh, no, in the latest show that I have, I work with a dog. The dog has to take naps, because dogs they take, so, we can't, we have to rehearse, then she naps, then we do the show. We can't rehearse and do the show. You have dogs, they nap all the time.
Yes, they do, thankfully.
Is this a film that you guys can watch back, or when is the last time you've sort of watched it through, and what was that experience like?
Not too long ago. I think it was actually at the screening, so a couple of years ago, and I hadn't seen it for, 20 years prior to that, and I was like, this is a pretty good film. You're reminded.
It's hard to see your films because I never see the film. I remember, that day that happened, or that, it brings me back to the friendship and the atmosphere of the set, which was very warm and very friendly. I miss people. I miss Dennis, it's dead. Other people that died, David, who I haven't seen in a long time. So I never really watched the film, not because I don't like it, I think it's a good film, but because it makes me nostalgic.
And there was a lot of laughter on the set, from what I've read.
Yes, there were many, many laughters. It was a very warm set. And it's very important. A lot of people think that because especially I was playing the character that was most abused, you were abused too, that maybe the set is a portrait, it has to reflect, has to be a mirror of what we portrayed. But it's actually the opposite, at least for me. If a set is threatening in any way, you can't really work, you freeze up, you become if a set is very warm, like David said, very friendly, very supportive, you become more creative and more daring. You say, can I do this, can I do that, maybe you should do that. So the set was like this. It was a very warm, friendly, safe place to be. And that's why we could go so far. I don't think we would have gone that far if it was frightening.
Any final memories you want to share from the set? Or?
Yes, I want to talk about Laura Dern. So, Laura Dern, yes, is the greatest.
She's not here. We can say whatever we want.
No, Laura Dern, she did a film before Blue Velvet called The Mask that Peter Bogdanovich had directed, and she played a blind person. And Laura is such a good actress that when David called me and he said, I found for the ingenue, the blonde, I don't think he uses this term, Laura Dern, I thought, wow, Laura Dern, I didn't imagine that character to be blind, because I thought Laura Dern was a blind actress. I said, but it might be a symbolic, because she's so naive and she talks, she's blind. So I saw it all, a thing in my head. And when I met Laura for the first time, and she said, hello, how are you? I would grab her hand. And then we were walking, at a certain point I whispered to her, there is a step. And she said, yes, I can see it. You can see it? You see? She said, yes. I said, I thought you were blind. I said, no, I'm not blind. What makes you think that? Playing The Mask. You said, but I'm an actress. And I'm Ingrid Bergman's daughter, I should know. When an actress pretend. But she's so convincing.
Any other memories from you, Kyle?
Just the one that flashed, I mean, many, but the one that flashed into my head was the night we did the scene in the car where we're sitting there and it's like, why are there people like Frank in the world? And so we're sitting in this car and we're waiting to shoot the scene. It's a night scene, and we're sitting there and it's us in a car, you know, so we're in a car. Fred Elms is lighting, you know. So, you know, it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, it's 12 o'clock at night. Fred's still lighting. So it's just Laura and I.
It's very slow at lighting.
I mean,
slow.
it looked beautiful. Every single leaf on every tree was illuminated. It was so spectacular. But I just remember sitting with Laura and just talking and hanging out there. And then finally we got to shoot the scene. The sun was coming up. It was like 5 in the morning and we finally get to roll on this thing. And we did it bang, bang, you know, two real quick little takes. And just, you know, I don't know, it was a wonderful little situation sitting in the car and talking and watching her work and just hanging out. I mean, I think that's one of the things about David's set, what you were saying earlier, it's just fun to hang out with
I
the
think
people.
hanging out is very important for artists because you get to know each other and you get to, I learned that when I first worked in Italy with, he's a friend of mine from Italy, Adriano, and he knows a wonderful comedian, Renzo Arbore, who worked with me and Roberto Benigni. He gave us the first opportunity to work. Roberto Benigni is known in America too for Life is Beautiful, for his film, he won the Oscar. And Roberto Benigni and I started to work together. And Renzo is really our master, and he believed in hanging out. We went to dinner, and it was such a creative process, you don't even realize it. It's impossible to do it at the table as you do it with numbers or business meeting. You really have to enter in sync. So hanging out and friendship is very good for art, I think.
And I think that comes through in the film.
You did the movie Papocchio. Yes, I did. But the Papocchio was the film I did with this Renzo Arbore, who has never come to America. In fact, it was a parody of the Vatican, and it was considered heresy. It was so it was burned at the stake, like Joan of Arc, that film. It still circulates in Italy underground, but it's considered heresy.
Something like Blue Velvet in the beginning. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you
for
so
being
much.
here.
Pleasure.
Thank you.